All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Feminist Final Solution. No Sons, No Slavery, written by Connie Riker. Available now. Links in description. Feminist Final Solution. A field guide for men who still notice reality. The succubus state and the gynocentric Turing test. Dismantling the Marxist myth of fake matriarchies, the pathological fraud of manufactured female distress, and the Duluth model's war on men to reclaim the iron forge of the logos. You have been drugged by a counterfeit history, a veritable chalice of chloroform designed to render you docile while your civilization is dismantled around you. The academic sorcerers of cultural Marxism have conspired to invert reality, whispering the seductive lie of a matriarchal prehistory, a Neolithic feminist utopia where women ruled with peaceful, egalitarian grace before the evil patriarchy supposedly ruined it with swords and logic. Let us fix the grammar of this fraud. Matriarchy, from the Greek mater, mother, and archein, to rule, has been deliberately mutated by ideologues to mean peaceful cooperation, while patriarchy is slandered as systemic violence. This is a linguistic deception. If a transcultural matriarchy of peace existed for millennia, the archaeological record would show it. Instead, we find skulls bashed in by stone axes and the harsh, unyielding evidence of survival. The matriarchal prehistory is an unfalsifiable projection of modern neurotic progressivism onto pottery shards. It is the Duluth model applied to ancient history. Assuming men are inherently guilty of violence and women are innocent angels, simply to justify your subjugation in the present. Having poisoned your past, they now seek to police your present through the exhausting, omniscient burden of the gynocentric Turing test. You know the drill. You are in a crowded mall and she suddenly feigns a panic attack or manufactures anxiety to see if you will fold. She demands you be attuned to her. Etymologically, attune implies a mutual harmony, but in practice, it is a one-way surveillance state. You are expected to decode her micro-expressions and manage her emotional dysregulation while she refuses to speak. If you ask what is wrong, you are smothering. If you maintain your frame, you are neglectful. This is not a quest for connection. It is a calculated evolutionary fitness test, a deliberate injection of chaos to measure if you will abandon your logos to cater to her pathos. The remedy is stoic immovability. You do not bow to the storm. You stand firm and force the storm to break against you. To stand firm against this tidal wave of manufactured hysteria, you must fortify your very flesh. The modern world insists that reality is a social construct, a malleable narrative subject to the whims of feelings. The antidote is iron. Discipline, derived from the Latin disciplina, learning, is the ontological acquisition of truth through the body. When you stand before a barbell, gravity does not care about your pronouns, your feelings, or your status as an ally. It is an unyielding objective reality. By forcing your body to lift it, you impose logos upon the chaos of your own matter. Sticking to a rigorous exercise routine is not vanity. It is a sacrament of competence and a categorical rejection of effeminacy, the classical vice of choosing comfort over duty. A man who cannot master his own body is a subject of the maternal state, a soft creature ripe for exploitation. The gym is the philosophical forge where the warrior is reborn. But what happens when you build your strength only to find that the referee is corrupt? We live under a legal system that has weaponized female tears into a judicial WMD. Justice, classically defined as the will to render to each his due, has been redefined as the pandering to the female collective. The courts and police routinely dismiss female perpetration of violence while criminalizing your nature. The Duluth model explicitly assumes men are perpetrators and women are victims regardless of the facts, a logical suicide that discards evidence in favor of a predetermined, anti-masculine conclusion. Fathers are arrested in their own homes for being assaulted by their wives, sacrificed on the altar of mandatory arrest policies. The state has become the ultimate beta provider, extracting resources from you via taxation to fund a system that views your protection as oppression. This is the feminist final solution. Men reduced to state slaves, stripped of due process, and bereft of rights. It is time to break the spell, refuse the collective guilt, and starve the beast. The chalice of chloroform, annihilating the matriarchal prehistory myth. Imagine a forensic investigator arriving at a crime scene, stepping over a bludgeoned skull, ignoring the shattered ribs, and declaring with absolute academic authority that the victim died of a severe allergic reaction to pollen. You would question his competence, his sanity, and his motives. Yet, this is precisely the level of pseudo-scientific fraud we are expected to swallow when confronted with the matriarchal prehistory myth. For decades, the cultural Marxist establishment has paraded the likes of Marija Gimbutas and Riane Eisler as high priestesses of history, projecting their modern, neurotic, progressive ideologies onto fragments of Neolithic pottery. They have fabricated a utopian partnership model of prehistoric society, a serene, egalitarian, earth-worshipping matriarchy that supposedly existed for millennia before the violent, patriarchal Kogan invaders ruined the party. This is not history, it is a chloroform-soaked rag pressed over the face of reason, designed to keep you unconscious while they rob you of your ancestry. To expose the rot, we must apply the first pillar of the trivium. Grammar, we must pin down the definitions before the leftist conjurers can shuffle the semantic cups. The word matriarchy descends directly from the Greek mater, mother and archane, to rule. Its structural counterpoint, patriarchy, comes from pater, father, and archane. For centuries, these terms designated the locus of legal, economic, and political authority within a given social structure. However, because the archaeological record utterly failed to produce evidence of a female-ruled equivalent to the Roman Senate or the Athenian polis, Marxist archaeologists deliberately redefined the term. They stripped matriarchy of its actual political meaning and inflated it into a nebulous, unfalsifiable cloud of peaceful, egalitarian earth-worshipping consciousness. Why? To construct a false dichotomy where masculine order equates inherently to violent oppression, and feminine chaos equates to paradise lost. It is a linguistic shell game, a pathetic evasion of empirical reality designed to weaponize history against the living spirit of Western civilization. Let us wield the blade of formal logic and watch this pathetic theory bleed out. The syllogism is unassailable. Premise A: if a peaceful transcultural matriarchy existed globally for millennia prior to a patriarchal invasion, it would have left behind unambiguous global structural and defensive archaeological evidence, as all widespread civilizations do. Premise B: no such global structural evidence exists. The archaeological record overwhelmingly demonstrates continuous, localized human conflict, resource competition, and deeply entrenched hierarchy. Conclusion: therefore, the matriarchal prehistory theory is empirically false. It is a fabrication. The left relies entirely on the entameme, a hidden, unstated premise, banking on the emotional gullibility of its followers to fill in the blanks with feelings instead of facts. They present a handful of corpulent clay fertility figurines and demand you extrapolate a global, stateless, pacifist utopia. By that exact metric, a future archaeologist unearthing a modern Barbie doll could declare the 21st century a matriarchal dictatorship of plastic women. It is an absurdity that violates the basic laws of thermodynamics and evolutionary biology. Do not be fooled by the whimsical language of goddess worship. The historical reality of ancient gynocentric fertility cults is anything but egalitarian. These cults were hyper-hierarchical, steeped in superstition and drenched in human blood. They were not cooperative knitting circles. They demanded the ritual slaughter of the year king. In these primitive systems of female sexual selection, run violently amok, a male was elevated solely to be fattened, paraded, and brutally murdered to ensure a good harvest. This was a system completely devoid of due process, rational jurisprudence, or the transcendent concept of individual human dignity. It was the ultimate expression of disposable masculinity, a man's only value reduced to his utility as a bleeding sacrifice to appease the volatile, irrational feminine divine. The chalice of this prehistoric myth was filled not with wisdom, but with the chloroform of ignorance and the blood of disposable men. This deliberate falsification of antiquity is the Duluth model of ancient history. Just as the modern Duluth model of domestic violence presumes that masculine aggression is an innate, pathological evil and feminine innocence is absolute, discarding all contradictory data to force a predetermined anti-masculine conclusion, feminist historiography presumes the innate evil of patriarchal civilization. It forces the entirety of human evolution into a tyrannical framework of oppressor versus oppressed, violently ignoring the biological imperatives of survival. The truth is far more profound and far more dangerous to the woke narrative. Competence-based hierarchy is not a social construct invented by angry men. It is a pre-political natural law requirement for civilization. It is the pragmatic manifestation of justice, giving proportionate honor to actual merit. When danger growls at the gates of the tribe, a council of feelings and egalitarian committee meetings does not save the day. The strongest, most competent, and most courageous men step forward. They assume the burden, they enforce the order, and they save the community from ruin. We must categorically refuse the collective guilt that feminist historiography attempts to impose upon us. The Marxist lie is designed to sever you from your ancestors, to delegitimize your natural authority, and to make you apologize for the very institutions that dragged humanity out of the primeval mud. Look at the sword, not through the twisted lens of modern calumny that reduces it to a mere instrument of oppression, but through the clarifying lens of natural law and the transcendentals. The sword alongside the masculine mastery ladder required to forge and wield it is the physical embodiment of logos. It is the instrument of justice. It divides truth from falsehood. It protects the weak from the strong. It carves rational order out of the primeval swamp of feminine chaos. Masculine authority is not a parasitic blight upon history. It is the living, beating heart of civilization. To shame men into abandoning their birthright, based on a fabricated myth of matriarchal Eden, is the ultimate satanic inversion. We are the inheritors of a tradition that tamed the wilderness, codified justice, and reached for the divine. We will not be lectured by academics who cannot tell the difference between a prehistoric massacre site and a pottery class. Having dismantled the historical fraud of the matriarchal prehistory theory, a terrifying realization emerges. The ancient demand for masculine sacrifice did not vanish, it merely evolved. The blood-stained altars of the fertility cults have been renovated into the fluorescent-lit temples of modern corporate human resources, where the sword of logos is confiscated and melted down into a serf's collar. The gynocentric imperative remains identical in its teleology, the total subjugation of male agency to female hypergamy, but it has shifted its weaponry from literal blades to Kafkaesque bureaucratic mandates. It weaponizes the language of equity to enforce a naked power grab, demanding that men pay a perpetual tribute of psychological submission. I saw this exact gynocentric trap in action. The gynocentric Turing test, manufactured distress, and the burden of omniscience. I once had the distinct displeasure of sitting in a sterile, glass-walled corporate boardroom during a mandatory diversity and inclusion seminar, watching a spectacle of bureaucratic hypergamy unfold. A female executive, compensated handsomely to police the thoughts of her male colleagues, presented a slide titled "Navigating Masculine Energy in the Workplace." Her grand grievance: men were impossible to work with. If a man took charge of a project, he was too aggressive and intimidating. If he stepped back to allow female colleagues to lead, he was too passive and unsupportive. This is the gynocentric Turing test in action, a rigged game of gamma bias where the goalposts are mounted on wheels and the only constant is the condemnation of masculine agency. It is a logical impossibility designed not to foster harmony, but to subjugate. The demand is not for equality, it is for a serf's collar. You are permitted to exist only as a responsive automaton calibrated to her ever-shifting emotional latitude, never as a sovereign agent acting on objective reality. To understand the mechanics of this swindle, we must fix our grammar and examine the etymology of the word attunement. The term traces back to the old French attoner, meaning to bring into harmony or to make it one. Historically, this implied a mutual resonance, a musical chord where two distinct notes contribute to a consonant sound. In the modern gynocentric paradigm, this definition has been grotesquely mutated. Attunement no longer signifies a mutual chord. It mandates a one-way, hyper-vigilant male surveillance of the female emotional landscape. It is the expectation that a man must act as a psychic radar operator, constantly scanning the horizon for incoming mood swings, while the woman contributes entirely nothing but the chaotic weather. This is not the harmony of a symphony, it is the tyranny of a hostage-taker demanding you guess the password to your own freedom. This expectation of telepathic servitude reveals itself through a Kafkaesque snare of unfalsifiable demands, the "is he attuned?" examination. The framework of this trap is sadistically brilliant in its straightforwardness. If you ask a woman what is amiss, you are bothering her, smothering her, or failing to read the room. If you remain silent, you are deemed neglectful, cold, and lacking emotional intelligence. You stand condemned irrespective of your chosen behavior. This requires men to exhibit godlike omniscience, holding us accountable for a woman's unvoiced needs, while simultaneously stripping us of the power to govern or critique those needs. It acts as the physiology of a parasite, expecting the host to foresee every dietary necessity without the parasite expending a single calorie of communication. It remains an epistemological impossibility disguised as a moral failure within the man. Consider the specific calculated tactic of the nervous in a crowd shit test. You are walking through a perfectly safe, brightly lit shopping mall, and suddenly she clutches your arm, lowers her head, and feigns a panic attack, claiming the benign environment is overwhelming. This is not a psychological emergency, it is an evolutionary fitness test. It is a deliberate, pathological injection of chaos to measure if you will abandon your own frame, assume the burden of her irrationality, and take coercive control so she can evade responsibility for her own emotional state. This is the biological imperative of the shit test laid bare. Women are hardwired to prod and poke the masculine frame to ensure they are anchored to a man of unshakable logos. They are testing for the warrior archetype. A man who folds to her manufactured distress, panicking and supplicating, is proven unworthy of following. A man who ignores the drama, maintains his mission, and keeps his composure is proven a king. The remedy to this hysteria is the strategic action of stoic affect. When a woman feigns distress to test your frame, you must act as the immovable object. You do not panic, you do not supplicate. You maintain external and internal order, forcing her to align with your reality rather than bowing to her theatrical chaos. You refuse to validate the pathology. You look at the manufactured distress with the calm, unblinking eye of a surgeon examining a rash, and you refuse to contract the disease. By refusing to play the game, you shatter the illusion and force the responsibility for her emotional state back onto her shoulders, where natural law dictates it belongs. Let us cement this truth with the rigor of formal logic and expose the self-refutation of the leftist ideological dogma. Premise A. If emotional regulation is a hallmark of mature adulthood, and modern feminism demands that men accommodate and manage women's unregulated anxieties, then modern feminism inherently advocates for female infantilization. Premise B. Feminism claims to advocate for strong, independent female adulthood. Conclusion. Therefore, feminism is entirely self-refuting, as it demands the privileges of adult independence while weaponizing the infantile dysfunction of a dependent. It is an ideology that screeches, "I am a queen," while demanding you tie its shoes. I watched this pathological feminization metastasize from the domestic sphere, where women weaponize unregulated emotion to enslave men into the very institutions charged with defending civilization's outer walls. The same infantile emotional tyranny a modern man endures when his wife feigns distress at a crowded dinner party has now been scaled up and weaponized as official state doctrine. If the individual man can be neutralized by forcing him to attune to feminine chaos rather than hold his frame, then entire armies can be neutralized by replacing the forge of physical hardship with the balm of therapeutic comfort. The enemy understood this perfectly. Conquer the masculine will by pathologizing its virtues, and the body follows. What begins as a shit test in the living room ends as a national security crisis. The iron sacrament, physical mastery, as the antidote to the maternal state. Consider the grimly hilarious spectacle of the modern military and police apparatus, a once formidable crucible of martial virtue, now reduced to a glorified yoga studio. We are instructed by our bureaucratic overseers that the paramount threat to Western civilization is no longer the barbarian at the gate, but the purportedly fragile emotional state of the sentinel guarding it. Police departments and military branches, historically the agonistic arenas where men were stripped of their boyish vanity and forged into hardened guardians of the polis, now mandate mindfulness training and passive, breath-focused stretching. This is not a mere institutional misstep. It is a symptom of total cultural surrender to the maternal state. By replacing the rigorous, agonizing, competitive physical ordeal required to harden a man against the horrors of combat with hyper-individualized, inward-looking, and inherently effeminate therapeutic practices. The state has effectively declared that your emotional comfort is more important than your operational competence. They are not training lethal warriors, they are housebreaking compliant eunuchs. To understand the depth of this degradation, we must anchor our grammar in the bedrock of reality. Let us define our terms with ruthless precision. The modern gynocentric complex falsely defines discipline as a form of self-punishment, a gloomy, puritanical restriction on their beloved liberation. This is a linguistic and ontological lie. Trace the word to its Latin root disciplina, which means instruction, knowledge, and teaching, derived from discere, to learn. True physical discipline is not self-flagellation. It is the epistemological acquisition of truth through the central nervous system. It is the rational will-imposing logos, the objective, ordering principle of the universe directly upon the chaotic raw material of the flesh. When you impose a strict physical regimen upon your day, you are not merely doing a hobby, you are engaging in the highest form of dialectic. Your mind proposes a hypothesis of action, your body tests it against the unyielding reality of gravity, and the resulting adaptation is the physical synthesis of truth. This brings us to an irrefutable syllogistic proof that shatters the entire delusional framework of modern social constructionism. Premise A: if objective reality exists independent of human feelings, as dictated by natural law and the very physics that govern the cosmos. Premise B: physical, iron and gravity obey strict, unyielding, objective laws that care entirely nothing for your pronouns, your trauma, or your socioeconomic background. Conclusion. Therefore, the act of lifting heavy iron forces an individual to align directly with objective reality. The modern feminist and cultural Marxist insists, with the righteous fury of a toddler denied a toy, that reality is merely a subjective, socially constructed narrative. I invite these ideologues to walk into a power rack and negotiate with a 405-pound barbell using their critical theory. Tell the barbell about your emotional boundaries. Explain to gravity that its relentless downward pressure is a patriarchal conspiracy designed to oppress your fluidity. The iron will crush your existence with the absolute, impartial indifference of the cosmos. The gym is the ultimate refuge from the lies of the maternal state precisely because it is completely immune to political correctness. The iron is the uncompromising judge that delivers pure, unadulterated meritocracy. It is precisely this undeniable, metric-driven meritocracy that drives the feminist hydra into fits of envious rage. Why does the left so vehemently despise male physical spaces, competitive sports, and the rugged apprenticeship mastery ladder of physical trades? Because these domains demand an objective standard of competence that cannot be manipulated by female tiers, sexual capital, or diversity quotas. A female grifter can bat her eyelashes at a blue-pilled simp in a corporate HR department and secure a middle management position based entirely on her anatomical advantages. She cannot, however, negotiate her way up a mastery ladder of physical competence. She cannot manipulate a heavy deadlift, nor can she shame a grappling mat into submitting to her demands. They despise the all-male gym because it is an enclave where male competence is the only currency accepted, and their sudden urge to invade and feminize these spaces is driven by the demonic jealousy of beings who are biologically incapable of thriving within them. They seek to destroy the hierarchy of competence because they cannot climb it. Let us clearly distinguish the pathology that ails us. The classical definition of effeminacy is not rooted in a man's sexual preference. Rather, it is the cowardly preference for comfort over duty, the substitution of an easy lie for a hard truth. It is the catastrophic vice of placing temporary tranquility above the requirements of justice and civilizational survival. A man who refuses the mastery ladder of physical discipline is not merely lazy. He is practicing a profound acedia, a complete refusal of his own biological and spiritual destiny. He is willingly surrendering his sovereignty to the therapeutic maternal state, trading his birthright as a protector and provider for a swaddling blanket of state-sanctioned mediocrity. To refuse the call of physical hardship is to announce to the universe that you are a willing slave, a domesticated beast of burden, perfectly satisfied to chew his cud in the ideological slaughterhouse of the modern matriarchy. The physical exercise routine is not a lifestyle choice. It is the modern equivalent of the hunter-gatherer ordeal. It is the fundamental masculine requirement for survival. When a man steps into the gym, he is entering a philosophical forge. He is voluntarily subjecting himself to a localized ordeal of suffering, playing out the eternal archetype of the hero facing the dragon. He confronts objective reality, faces his own profound physical limitations, and forces an adaptation through sheer force of will. A man who cannot adhere to a routine is a man who has surrendered his inner kingdom to his lower appetites. He lacks the stoic architecture to defend himself against the manipulative emotionalism of the women and leftists who eagerly exploit his weakness. Sovereignty over the self begins with absolute dominion over the musculoskeletal system. If you cannot command your own flesh to move a heavy object from point A to point B against its will, you possess no philosophical right to demand liberty in the public square. Connect this physical mastery to the highest aesthetic principles of the Western canon. A disciplined muscular physique is not mere vanity, it is the physical instantiation of internal order. It represents the true, the good, and the beautiful made flesh. When you see a man who has dedicated years to mastering his physical form, you are not merely looking at a biological machine. You're looking at living proof of the transcendental virtues. His physical order signals to society that he possesses the willpower to protect, the capacity to provide, and the spiritual fortitude to prioritize a long-term civilizational mission over the fleeting, base gratification of a cheap dopamine hit. A man who sculpts his body is practicing an architectural devotion to the divine, building a mobile monument to the living spirit of Western civilization. Every rational man must immediately adopt a rigorous, unyielding physical discipline and treat that discipline as a sacred sacrament. You must view the gym not as a recreational center, but as a church of restoration where the liturgy of sweat and iron is chanted in defiance of an empire of lies. You must aggressively reject the comfort-based, therapeutic health advice pushed by the medical-industrial complex, which seeks to manage your decline with pharmaceuticals and low-fat diets, keeping you weak, compliant, and easily ruled. Your body must be actively forged through voluntary suffering and objective, metric-driven competence. Therefore, physical exercise is not merely a path to health. It is a defiant, unapologetic, and highly explosive act of direct rebellion against the pathological, soul-crushing lies of cultural Marxism. I have shown you that voluntary physical suffering disciplines the soul and aligns a man's very flesh with the unyielding truths of objective reality. But a terrifying paradox remains: the iron you lift obeys natural law, while the modern state actively disdains it. The ideological saboteurs of the West realized they could never conquer the awakened masculine spirit in honest physical combat. Instead, they bypassed your physical defenses entirely and weaponized the legal bureaucracy against you. They have replaced the objective scales of justice with the hysterical whims of female emotionalism, mutating the state from a defender of due process into a predatory enforcer of gynocentric supremacism. If the gym is your physical fortress against external chaos, the family court and the police cruiser are a guillotine built by the very Marxists who despise your competence. I will now dissect the mechanics of this tyrannical machine so you can witness the absolute horror of what happens when a man trusts the state to protect him. The gavel and the succubus, state-sanctioned female violence and the death of due process. I picture the unfiltered terror of a man bleeding inside his own residence, his flesh slashed by the sharp fragments of a hurled glass, his mind broken by endless hours of cruel psychological torment from an outrageously hysterical spouse. He acts on basic civilized instinct. He calls law enforcement to re-establish peace. The officers show up, assess the destruction, and governed by the oppressive weight of mandatory arrest policies, they lock the shackles around his arms. You must thoroughly comprehend this disgusting distortion of truth. The injured party is thrown into a cell, while his tormentor receives total control over his home, his offspring, and his finances. To understand this betrayal, we should examine our language and look at the roots of fairness. The concept stems from the Latin jus, translating to right or law, historically characterized by ancient legal minds as the continuous and steady desire to give everyone what they deserve. Contemporary female-centric ideologies have gutted this concept, swapping the impartial measurement of actual damage with non-stop appeasement of the female demographic. The government fails to provide what is deserved. Instead, it forcefully takes whatever belongs to men. We are endlessly lectured by the high priests of cultural Marxism that women are inherently peaceful, celestial beings incapable of malice. But this biologically illiterate fantasy collapses under the weight of empirical data. Suppressed academic research overwhelmingly demonstrates that women initiate domestic violence at equal or higher rates than men. The difference lies not in the capacity for cruelty, but in the tactical execution of it. Women intuitively specialize in covert asymmetric warfare. While a man might lash out physically in a moment of pathetic, undisciplined weakness, the female predator utilizes weapons, false imprisonment, systematic parental alienation, and psychological terrorism. She rarely needs to throw a punch when she can simply dial 911 and summon the state's heavily armed proxies to do her violence for her. She weaponizes the very gynocentrism she claims to oppose, turning the police force into her personal hit squad and the family court into her extortion racket. The demonic engine of this state-sanctioned sadism is the Duluth model of domestic intervention, a framework so blindly hateful it would make a medieval inquisitor blush. This degenerate protocol explicitly frames men as perpetrators and women as victims, regardless of the factual evidence presented at the scene. Let us dissect this pathology with the merciless blade of formal logic. Premise A: if a legal policy automatically assumes Class A is guilty and Class B is innocent, based purely on biological identity, then that policy is inherently discriminatory and devoid of individual justice. Premise B: the Duluth model and modern believe all women frameworks assume men, Class A, are perpetrators and women, Class B, are victims based solely on biological identity. Conclusion: therefore, these frameworks are inherently tyrannical and completely incompatible with the Western tradition of due process. This is not a systemic glitch, it is a feature of the gynocentric matrix. It is a deliberate, malicious rejection of the transcendental good. rooting the legal system in a primal tribal biological witch hunt rather than the objective logos of natural law. Look closely at the architecture of this misery, and you will see the Leviathan state has wholly assumed the role of the ultimate beta provider. By systematically disenfranchising fathers and husbands, the state extracts the wealth of men through punitive taxation and biased child support systems, transferring those resources directly to women via welfare, single mother subsidies, and affirmative action. The government has effectively cuckolded the entire male sex. They demand our total subjugation, taxing our labor to subsidize female hypergamy and recklessly broken homes, while stripping us of our fundamental natural right to lead the families we financially sustain. Men have been reduced to state slaves, ATM machines with no legal authority, forced to provide for women who bear zero reciprocal obligation to them. This is the apex of the gynocentric Ponzi scheme, the complete commodification of male utility and the total erasure of male consent. I am telling you now that voting harder or complaining to a system built on your destruction is a fool's errand. If we are to save Western civilization from this rot, we must aggressively and unapologetically opt out of state-sanctioned marriage and institutional trust. We must starve the beast. We achieve this by building alternative, parallel civil society associations exclusively for men, withdrawing our competence, our taxes, and our compliance from a system that criminalizes our nature while rewarding female sociopathy. True subsidiarity requires that we dismantle this gynocentric legal monopoly entirely. We must fiercely decentralize legal power, returning authority to the family unit under strict paternal headship, crushing the state's ability to act as the enforcement arm of toxic femininity. We must become the architects of a new paradigm, building new institutions by men for men, grounded in the living spirit of the Western canon, and force the restoration of logos upon a world desperate for order. Look around you. You have been living in a funhouse mirror constructed by bitter harridans and state-subsidized grifters, a pathological illusion designed to extract your labor while demanding your apology for providing it. For decades, you swallowed the poison, believing that if you just bent the knee a little further, if you just apologized a little harder for the crime of being born male, the Hydra would finally grant you peace. But peace is never negotiated with a parasite. It is enforced by the sword of truth. We have dissected the grotesque anatomy of this matriarchal fantasy, from the fake prehistoric goddesses to the modern family court judge who signs away your livelihood on the uncorroborated word of a perjurer. You are the net taxpayer. You are the builder of every bridge and border wall. You are the physical embodiment of the logos, and you owe no debt to a civilization that hates your name. Consider the empirical wreckage of this so-called equality. Hundreds of thousands of unborn children are aborted annually under the banner of bodily autonomy, a mechanical blood sacrifice to the god of convenience, while fathers are legally gagged and bound from saving their own flesh and blood. Look at the divorce courts, where men are systematically separated from their children and wealth on a bureaucratic conveyor belt of state-sanctioned theft and literal cuckoldry. Consider the silent, unspoken statistical horror. Men account for nearly 80% of all suicides. Precisely because this gynocentric matrix strips them of their natural telos, their right to provide, protect, and lead, and replaces it with a prescription for passive, medicated compliance. They tell you to sit with your feelings. I tell you to stand on your feet. You are a man. Your body is not a canvas for your frailties. It is a temple of discipline, a physical manifestation of internal order built to resist the decay of this decadent age. When you lift that iron, you are not merely building muscle, you are inscribing natural law onto your very bones, refusing the sickly, dependent posture of the maternal state's ideal serf. The modern world demands you be a compliant eunuch, a terrified attendant to female neuroticism. You must become the warrior scholar. The Marxist spell breaks the exact second you stop seeking the approval of those who wish to consume you. Never apologize for your competence. Never accept the collective guilt of a rewritten history. Starve the beast of your compliance. Walk out of the gynocentric church of eternal guilt. Build your own parallel institutions, master your physical reality, and stand unyielding in the face of manufactured distress and bureaucratic tyranny. You have swallowed the ultimate red pill, and the truth you now possess is an unshakable armor. The scales have fallen from your eyes. Go forth. Speak this forbidden gospel with a fearless tongue, and let the architects of modern Babylon hear the thunderous roar of the men they thought they had broken. And now the sponsored book introduction, Feminist Final Solution. No sons, no slavery, you're angry. Good, let that rage burn through every lie you've swallowed since birth. Let it scorch the shame they carved into your bones when they told you to smile, to shrink, to serve. I wrote this book for you, the woman who's done playing nice, done bargaining with oppressors, done begging for scraps from a table built on your stolen labor. This is not a manifesto, it's a war cry. I know your exhaustion. I've felt it. I married a man who called himself rational as he gambled our future on crypto bro delusions. I comforted boyfriends who weaponized incompetence like a cudgel, then sobbed when I refused to mother them. I watched male genius torch economies, ecosystems, and my own sanity. But here's the truth I clawed from their gaslighting. Masculinity is a failed experiment. Its 10,000-year reign ends now. This book is for women who crave more than equality. We demand supremacy for the mothers who refuse to birth another generation of oppressors, for the lesbians building utopias where male violence can't poison the soil, for the witches ready to hex incels into oblivion. If you've ever fantasized about a world without men's demands, their excuses, their very DNA, keep reading. To the moderate feminists still clutching not all men like a security blanket, put this down. Return to your male-approved self-help drivel. This isn't for you. We're done coddling. Inside these pages, you'll learn to weaponize male tears into fuel for revolution. You'll dismantle the nuclear family, that breeding ground for patriarchal rot, and replace it with sisterhood collectives where children thrive without paternal contamination. You'll tax men into penance for centuries of free domestic labor, stolen wages, and porn-sick entitlement. You'll wield abortion as a sacrament, CR, SE's PR as a scalpel, and witchcraft as a grenade. Men built this hellscape. We'll burn it and birth something better. Their extinction isn't a threat. It's a promise. Your hands will hold the match. Read this. Rage, then rise. Feminist Final Solution. No sons, no slavery. Written by Connie Riker. Buy now. Links in description.